So let's go back to the source. Could you talk a little bit about the first time you realised you wanted to write lyrics and that the lyrical songwriting form was the form you felt was best suited to expressing yourself in?
Well, I think for most lyricists, well, especially, I can only speak for myself, I guess, but for a lot of lyricists, they actually get forced into the decision to write because it's usually like you decide you want to be in a band, you manage to persuade some friends to come round to your house and make a noise with you, and if you're the singer, then you have to write some words, and it's really it's not like you really want to write words. It's just that you're the singer, so if the song's going to work, you've got to write some words, and that's how it happened for me. So I formed a group when I was like 15, and we used to rehearse in my mum's living room on a Friday when she was out, and we started writing songs, but they were very, very poor, and the lyrics are very, very poor. I can tell you my first ever lyric that I ever wrote.
I think that would be great.
Yeah, it's not going to be in the collection. You'll be glad to hear, especially if you just signed a contract. But it's a song called Shakespeare Rock. You can probably tell from the title it's not going to be much. And it said, "Got a baby, only one thing's wrong. Quote Shakespeare all day long. I said, baby, why you ignoring me? She said, to be or not to be."
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and then it went Shakespeare Rock, Shakespeare Roll, Shakespeare, and then it repeated that ad infinitum. So I kind of fell into the thing of writing lyrics kind of by accident because nobody else would do it. So it was that kind of thing of, it was like homework or something. It was as appealing as that in a way. But after a while, I kind of got into it, yeah.
Well, can you tell us about the first moment you realised you could do it? What was the first lyric you wrote where you felt, actually, that's pretty good, that stands up alongside, I don't know, Bob Dylan?
No, I wouldn't say that. I probably wouldn't say that now. You know that. I think it's just when you write something and it amuses you or entertains you in some way. As I'm sure you know, you deal with poetry collections and submissions. So the biggest problem with people when they first start to write is they think, right, I'm going to say something really profound. I'm going to say something that nobody's said before, and I'm going to sum it all up in one song and blow everything apart or whatever. And if you have that idea in your mind, you always write absolute bilge, rubbish. And my breakthrough really came when I stopped kind of thinking, oh, I've got to be profound, and just started writing about everyday normal things. And that was really precipitated by an accident where I ended up falling from a window and being in hospital for about a month. So I really did come down to earth. So then my gaze shifted to the more kind of normal everyday things that maybe I had thought, oh, that's too everyday to bother with. But I kind of first had the realization that that's actually what I was quite interested in, and it was entertaining to me, and I was curious to find out how people lived their lives, because I didn't have a clue how to live mine. So I thought it'd be interesting to see how people filled their days, and then maybe copy them or something, I don't know. But I found it very intriguing. And yeah, and also I suppose I kind of realised also that although I thought that was like everyday reality's mundane, to someone somewhere else it wasn't. I suppose that was the second part of that when I moved to London, then suddenly I realised that the environment that I'd grown up in was particular, and so in a way was worth writing about, and that's when I started writing more specifically about Sheffield, I suppose, and that experience of growing up. So I think that's when the lyrics got kind of exciting for me, because they were then they were performing a very useful function for me then, because they were stopping me from forgetting things. I've got terrible memory, so in a way to write something down kind of fixed it, and I was feeling like I was in danger of forgetting where I'd come from, so by writing the little details down of things, it kind of fixed it there.
And so you're talking about this epiphany that you had, and this sort of realization that that the quotidian can be beautiful. Are there other poets and lyricists or prose writers, novelists that at the time still you feel operate in that same way and express the world in just as effective a way?
I suppose, Scott Walker had a big influence on me songwriting wise, because his records that he did in the 60s, the late 60s, when he left the Walker Brothers. The thing that I liked about that was that you had kind of kitchen sink or realistic observations, but then it was married to quite a big widescreen cinematic sounding kind of musical backing. Because you'd had stuff like, people mentioned the Kinks and stuff like that, which are very like English observational songs, and I like their work, but that often the musical backing would kind of quote from kind of like music hall tradition or whatever. Whereas I liked, there's a song of Scott Walker's called The Amorous Humphrey Plug, which is all about somebody slipping on a newly waxed floor and watching the telly swallowing me and things like that. So it's all about just somebody sitting in at home with the kids screaming and getting on the nerves and feeling like the telly's eating them. Very humdrum everyday thing, but it's this massive orchestral backing. And when I encountered that really blew my mind in a way, and because that's what I'd kind of been looking for, I suppose. The epic in the everyday or whatever, that always appealed to me. The fact that I don't think everyday life is mundane. I find it really, as I say, fascinating. Partly because I'm curious as to what keeps people functioning, and all the different ways people organise their lives and stuff like that. And I got it just the other day. Yesterday, in fact, I was in a taxi going to meet Simon Reynolds to talk to him, and I was in a terrible mood because I was late, the tube wasn't running, and then this taxi driver started telling me about his way of organising things. He said, I don't need computer, and he's brandishing this notebook. Colour coding is the way forward, and he got like this notebook, and then it was all different coloured paper clips which kind of filed everything, and he said, you don't need computer with this. He was driving at the time and thinking, just please keep your eye on the road, not on the notebook. But things like that, the little things that people invent, I love, those spontaneous little things, and that's what I thrive on, really. I like that aspect of things.
Your lyrics have always been these self-contained stories, mini short stories in lyrical form in many ways. Have you not felt the urge to write in prose at all, short story?
No,
Form attracts you?
No, because I'm lazy.
So the next question is, why now? Why is now the time for you to publish a selected lyrics?
I think the time has come. I don't know. I've been asked to do such a thing, to collect the words together quite a few times in the past, but I don't know. I've always had an ambivalent attitude to it all, because I kind of think they exist as part of the song, and I've always made a point of that. And so when the lyrics are reproduced on the sleeve of the record, it always says NB, please do not read the words whilst listening to the recordings, because I've always thought that the words, that's their natural habitat, and you shouldn't take them out from there. But I've kind of accumulated a certain amount of work now, and I think a lot of the appeal of it is, Faber have published a lot of poets that I really like, and the idea that I could be allowed to be in the same kind of, on the same shelf, if you like, is very flattering to me. And I went back and looked at the words. I had to do that because Pulp had been playing some shows this year, you know, so I had to go, and if I didn't want to look silly on stage, I had to make sure that I knew what the words were to the song. So I went back, and with that passage of time, I guess I realised that some of them were all right.
And are you finding, as you're looking back and making a selection, that there are consistent themes and that there's going to be a coherent shape to the book? Or
Wow.
Is that?
Well, there's some kind of, you'll probably be appalled when you see them. I even thought it could be the name of the collection, but I'm not sure, is that the number of times mother, brother, lover gets used as a rhyming scheme is a little bit embarrassing. So
That's actually not a bad title, to be honest. Yeah.
so that was quite, so you'll notice that. There are things, it's the nearest I've got to a diary. I've never kept a diary or anything like that, and never particularly written anything down. And so it does take you back into certain situations and things. And like I said, what's always been very important to me is to have detail in there, because it's things like noticing a particular, you know, like a coffee ring on a table or something like that. It's those things that prove that you were actually in that situation. And so it just makes things ring true for me, and that's what I kind of look for when I'm reading something. And so, those are the things, a coffee ring or something like that are the things that would disappear from your memory unless you wrote it down. And so when I went back and looked at stuff, that was quite interesting, because it did bring certain situations back quite clearly. It was horrifying. but it did, so it works, I think.
So final question. You've spoken very modestly about your how great it is to be sitting on a shelf alongside, you know, great favourite poets. And I know that one poet in particular has a great deal of importance to you, who's Philip Larkin. Could you say a little bit about the kinship you feel with Larkin and his words and what he represents?
Well, it would be a bit presumptuous of me to say I felt a kinship or whatever, but it's a bit misanthropic a lot of the time, you know. But
very misanthropic.
But in the way that it's put, rather, it kind of makes you laugh, and sometimes it's the kind of severity of the way that he describes things, and that makes you kind of laugh, and the very kind of matter-of-fact way that he puts things sometimes, which are quite brutal, you know, but somehow the way that he constructs it, is palatable to read, and also for some reason you don't think, God, he must have been a nasty piece of work. I never met him or whatever, but there's something human about him, you know.
And sometimes I think you recognise that sometimes facing the horror of the situation is the only way to get to the truth.
Yeah, dive straight in.
Yeah.